So until you see a black or brown person that practices mental health, that goes to therapy, that does grounding exercises, that does meditate, that does say positive affirmations. I mean, that's how I was introduced to therapy. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't until another black man, good friend of mine, noticed that I was struggling. I mean, at that time in my life, I had gotten a DUI. Was going through suicidal ideation. I was feeling like a burden. I had all these symptoms of depression and didn't know it. But because someone that looked like me was like, "Hey, have you thought about therapy?" That instantly builds trust. I can vouch for him, right? Because he looks like
Right.
me. He's my friend. All of that, and he was also a psychotherapist. And so it's like, well, if he's a psychotherapist, he's an expert on it. So maybe I should do it.
Behind every mission, every movement, and every attempt to create change, there's a human story shaping how it all unfolds. This podcast is for those change makers who believe the work that they're doing in the world should actually make people's lives better. Each week, I'm sitting down with these change makers who are shaping impact in their industries and communities. And together, we're going to explore the moments, the questions, and the perspective shifts that changed how they lead, how they build relationships, and how they create meaningful change in our world. I'm Dr. Payal Beri, and this is Reframing Perspectives. Archie, welcome to Reframing Perspectives. Since the moment that we met, only a month and a half ago, instantly connected, instantly we're just like going back and forth about the things that you're doing, the impact that you've made. So excited to have you here and to talk about just this out of box way that you have made such incredible impact in your world, in your community, and the things you keep doing. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor. And yeah, it's only been a month. That's crazy.
I know, it's wild, right? I was like, "Wait, really? It's only been like a month? That's wild." It feels like I've known you for, like, way longer.
I know.
But, you know, Archie, I wanna start, just diving right into just everything that you have done. It's been 10 years now, and your work is in the intersection of hip hop, mental health, and just empowerment. And I wanna know, let me just actually, I'm gonna start over again real quick. So, Archie, I want to dive right into everything with you, where you're at your 10 years. So, congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
in these 10 years, you have your work is in the intersection of mental health and hip hop music and empowerment. And what I personally believe is that every person on this planet has a purpose, whether they have tapped into it or they haven't. But every person has some form of, a gift and a purpose in this world. And their why sits very firmly within them. Now, how they manifest that why and how it shows up can change over time. It can be a nonprofit like you have done. It can be as being a musician, as an artist. It can be as a teacher. And you don't always have to fit into a box. And I think that you really show that. You really embody that by that you're not necessarily doing things according to this one planned out playbook, but you're doing it based off of this deep why that you have, the thing that you care about so much. And the way that you're manifesting it into the world has shown up in different layers and different versions of you. And I think that that is actually just as powerful as the work that you are doing. So to take all that and say in the last 10 years, with your work, what's the thing that you didn't think you'd still be doing this far in?
Wow, what a question and a setup. The setup was amazing. Yeah, it's hard to believe that it's already been 10 years that I've been doing this work. Honestly, like the way I was when I first started this journey, I have to honestly say, just being here, being alive, living within my purpose, living within my calling. That's the one thing that I would say uh, that my younger self probably wouldn't believe. And it's funny because I was just reflecting a couple days ago, uh, like 9 years ago, I had started the organization, but it was a grassroots organization, and we really
And
hadn't
tell
gotten.
everyone what the organization is.
Sure, sure. So I run a nonprofit, a 501c3 called Peel Them Layers Back. Our mission is to educate, equip, and empower Black men and boys with the tools to live a mentally healthy life. We do that utilizing the hip hop lens. So everything we do, hip hop and mental health go hand in hand. And it was launched from my own lived experience living with depression and anxiety and wanting to advocate and offer support to individuals that look like me, so the Black and brown community. And before I started the organization, I had quit my job. I was working a dead end 9 to 5, and I was a musician, a hip hop artist. I still am. And I wrote this song called Layers, and the song went viral. And on the hook, I say, peel them layers back over and over again. And that's what inspired me to name my organization, Peel Them Layers Back. But once we went viral with the song, it inspired me to start doing talks and events, public events with the Cleveland community, which is where I'm from, Cleveland, Ohio. And to be honest, like I was just trying to release some of the pain and stress that I had experienced personally. I didn't know it was going to resonate with so many people so quickly. And,
I
you know,
think that
when I,
just shows how much people are craving it and
yeah,
that people need it, but they didn't think that they're allowed to ask it, especially if we look at the Black community and we look at
hmm
Black men and boys, where the idea of going to therapy or the idea of talking about feelings is just, you don't go there. That's taboo. That's stigma. That's what girls do. That's not what, men do. And so you doing it and putting it out there, it just gave them permission.
yeah, you're absolutely right. At this time, this was back in 2016, depression was talked about in hip hop by other artists, such as even at the beginning, don't push me, I'm too close to the edge, like, and then up to the Ghetto Boys, Mind Playing Tricks on Me, and of course, Kid Cudi, Pursuit of Happiness, and Day and Night. But nobody was really talking about therapy. Like, there was
Mhm.
not really like, the story, the age old story was I'm depressed about life and suicidal, so I drink it away, I sex it away, I smoke it away. I do all these toxic things in it, like as opposed to seeking out help. And I was one of the first rappers to literally say, I go to therapy, and therapy saved and changed my life as a rapper, as a Black man. And I think, like you said, my story gave permission to anyone else that looked like me that it's okay to not be okay. And it is okay to ask for help. That's my North Star. Wherever you see me, like, if you ask me how I'm doing, I'm always going to tell you the truth. I'm not, how you doing? I'm fine. Like,
Right,
and
it's like
just,
you're saying, "How are you doing?" Oh, so you're really gonna tell me what it okay, we're not oh, okay. Alright, should I get my coffee or should I get okay, we're going there.
yeah, sometimes to a fault.
Yeah.
I tell people,
But I
but I
think we
also,
need more of that, right? We don't need that
yeah.
formal of, "Oh, how are you? How are you?" "Oh, I'm good," because it's just why are you even asking then? Why are you even asking, right? So, what you've done is, to your point, is like you went from, in a community, which I think that like it's so interesting. The more and more interviews I do, and also my own background of having been a clinical therapist, it's we all have this idea that our community struggles with this, but others don't. And
Mhm,
so, being brown, being Indian, being South Asian, like same thing. Like it's like, even until today, my brother considers therapy. It's like, yeah, that's cool, but like, I don't need to be labeled. I'm not going to be labeled by
mhm,
these professionals. I don't trust what what they're trying to get at or do.
mm,
So and I do think it's like, these communities that have often have a mistrust relationship with institutions, have a mistrust relationship with, others that have come in and, cause harm. And so much is we depend on just our collective community to be there. So it's like someone's going to go to their pastor, someone's going to go to, their church, they're going to go to their community. But how much do you like, what are your thoughts about this? Because, there is that element of like, yes, like you go to your elders, they're the ones who provide you that kind of support. And therapy is much more of like of a Western individualistic kind of like outlet type thing. But how can we keep going back to our elders if they're doing the same stuff,
mhm.
right? So you really broke out of that and were like, "No, I'm gonna go to therapy. I am gonna ask, like, when I'm asking you, 'How are you doing?' I wanna know how you're doing."
Yeah, I mean, prime example, like so basically the way the song went viral, I did an interview with Vice magazine, and literally a day before the article came out, my dad called me and he said he overheard, or no, like one of my best friend's dads had talked to him and said, like, Archie was talking about he's depressed and he's dealing with anxiety and all these different things. And my dad was like, you should keep that to yourself. You shouldn't be talking publicly about. Literally, my dad know the world was gonna know the next day. I was like, okay, dad. That was, it's a generational thing.
Absolutely.
Speaking for my parents' generation of boomers, it was very like, we have to be strong. There is no time to be weak, because if you're
Yeah.
weak, you're left behind. And as the generations went along, we got more in tune with what's inside and our emotion, and not being embarrassed by, "Ugh, I don't have it all together. And man, like, I really need some help." And the other thing about it is, like, our parents' generation, they grew up where everything was promised for them, was given to them. Job market, like a
Housing.
house, picket fence, like all of
Totally.
that. And millennials, we got nothing. We got none of that. We had to
I know.
create, we had to innovate. Like, we
Ugh,
are
we're
speaking from
living through the
millennials,
trauma.
not Gen X, not the Gen Z or Gen Alpha. Like, our generation has gone through so much trauma, and we continue to go through so much trauma. So honestly, like, if you're a millennial and you're not in therapy, it's like, really? Like, how are you surviving? Like,
It's so true, like, facts right there. Oh my god, I'm feeling like I'm oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, I've always said, I'm like, boomers are a special species of their own. Like, they really are. They benefited the most, and then they're like, "Why is it a problem for you?" Because they've never stopped taking. But But to go back to that moment, right, where you are sharing openly about depression and anxiety and just what that's like for you, there's still a level of vulnerability and safety that has to be around that for you to be able to share. And then to your point, like your dad saying, like, you shouldn't be sharing that, keep it to yourself. And there is a level of like, some people do share, but when you share it with the wrong person, it can actually be damaging.
mhm.
So, how did you navigate that part of, yeah, I'm gonna share this. And knowingly that if you share it with the wrong person or the wrong people hear it, the way that they're gonna have a response to you, it may actually exacerbate that depression and anxiety.
Sure, and that's a great question. There was a couple things. The first thing is, I saw someone else be vulnerable and share what they were going
Mm.
through. My mom. My mom is a 20 plus year breast cancer survivor. And at the time, she kind of kept me and my sister kind of like, we didn't know how severe. We were like, oh, it's breast cancer. We didn't know, like, no, any type of cancer can kill you. She kind of concealed that from us. But in terms of her transparency with what she was going through at that time, she became like a beacon of hope and light for so many other women who were eventually diagnosed or were going through diagnosis and all of that. And I saw how it fostered community. So the first reason why I was like, okay, I know I can do this, is I saw my mom do it. Like, and she was never embarrassed or ashamed to admit, like, yes, I had breast cancer. Yes, I had a breast removed. I survived. And I've not had any reoccurring cancer since. And then secondly, what I hinted at previously, fostering community. I understand the power of, if I share what's going on with me, I know that there's someone who is listening, who may not even be speaking, that went through the same thing. And they feel like, well, like, if he can share, if he can open up, and if he's going through this and he looks like me, then man, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not the only one. I'm not alone. So fostering community and, making sure that people feel like, look, there's a community of us. We all are going through something. And this is it. This is the one life we have to live. So, with that being said, it's important. It's almost like Morpheus in the Matrix. I'm trying to I'm trying to get you to free your mind. A lot of times,
Yeah.
these mental prisons are self-induced. Like
Mhm.
we put ourselves in this box that this is the way things are. Things can never change. I will never change. I will never be this type of person. It's like, no, like you actually can. And specifically for people that look like us, black and brown folk, like we have it worse than everybody, especially in this climate. Like we are
Mhm.
targets, whether it's immigration,
Mhm.
whether it's racism, whether it's all of the above.
Mhm.
It's like if you don't have a strong view of yourself, you will let the world dictate to you who you are. And so I understand the power of like, in order for me to look at myself highly and with dignity, I got to get all of this toxic, just evil, these bad thoughts out of my head. How do I do that? Well, I need help. So I start with therapy. And then for us, a PDLB, even for someone who is not necessarily ready to go to therapy, we offer programming that basically introduces the medicine without our students or our participants thinking it's medicine. You know, by using hip hop and creative expression as a way to release that pain, so you can actually heal yourself.
That's so powerful. And I think, to your point, that therapy doesn't always have to look like talk. It doesn't have to be, let's sit around and let's talk about our feelings. You can do it in this creative way of music, of, you're already an avid hip hop fan. So, hey, let's make one together. Let's make a song together. You really love comedy. Let's do improv. Let's
Yeah.
do, find artistic ways. Maybe you love painting. And so you find painting as a way to express what's going on internally. And then
Yes.
through that, communicate that. But I think what you're also referring to is that internal person of the strength that you have. Because I will say that in this climate, even with having a sense of self and strong sense of self, listening to too much media and listening to too much of what's going on, it still has a way of getting in. And what you're talking about is having a community of individuals that so that even with your strong sense of self, the minute you feel it slipping, you've got a community to reach out to and
Hmm.
be like, "Hey, let's go make some music. Let's go do
Yeah.
something that gets you
Hmm.
out of that place of fear and brain fog and just paralyzing yourself and being able to
Yes.
express it out again." So take us from like, that moment of your song goes viral, you got all these people reaching out to you saying, my gosh, what you're feeling is what I'm feeling. I'm going through this. You start your nonprofit, you start this organization, you call yourself a cope dealer. And I love that so much. But I want to understand that who was someone that saw that name as a problem? Or what did they think that they were protecting the minute you're saying, "Hey, I'm a cope dealer." And they're like, and you saw if someone had resistance to what you're presenting yourself with, it's often because there's things in there that it's like, you're finding resistance? Well, then you're exactly the person who needs to come in and, learn to cope in healthy ways.
That's a great question. Well, part of that I expect, right? Because it is a play on words. So when I say coke dealer, like, of course, certain folks may react and say dope dealer. Like, so you're a dope dealer? Is that what you are? And it's like, no, like this is, so my intention with coming up with that name, coke dealer, was to spark conversation. And like, it is, what does that mean, coke dealer? And what I can tell you, most of the resistance that we have received has primarily been from teachers, administrators that just don't understand how to get through to the youth. Our primary target are high school and young adult Black men and boys. And we've had, since I started doing this work, speaking at schools, speaking at colleges, so many times, I can't tell you how many times where after I've done a speech and told my story, and the kids, came up to me and said, man, that really resonated with me, that connected with me. So many times administrators and teachers will come up to me and say, man, like we've tried to get through to this student for X amount of months. They lost a friend to suicide, but this is the first time they actually spoke about it. There were so many times. And so part of it was the vulnerability, but also part of it again was the fact that it's hip hop. It's something that is so popular. It's something that everybody loves. It's the most influential art form on the planet. And because I'm harnessing the power of that to help someone heal, it doesn't even feel like I'm going to therapy, I'm going to see a specialist or anything, even though our programs are ran by licensed therapists and licensed counselors. These counselors look a lot more like the youth that are in need, whereas their guidance counselor, the therapist that they're set up with doesn't speak the same, doesn't look the same, didn't grow up in the same neighborhood. So we come from a vantage point of we want to meet people where they are because we are from where they are. We've been there, we understand it, all of that. So cultural competence is another area of expertise for us. Like that's a North Star for us as well. It's like because so many times we've been told by doctors that don't understand what it is to be Black in America, like, "Oh, this is not, what you're going through is normal," or misdiagnosis or whatever
Or
the
you're
case may be.
embellishing.
You're embellishing, you're overdoing it. Like it's not that bad. Whereas like, man, like I'll tell you a quick story. I mean, our very first Coke dealer program on the very first day, we had started at this school in Kent, Ohio, Theodore Roosevelt High School, and we had our licensed professional there. And 5 minutes into the start of the session, the school was placed on lockdown because there was suspicion that a student had brought a gun to school. And within about another 5 minutes, they got a knock on the door. Our Coke dealers. And in walks their guidance counselor and SWAT uniformed police officers. And they took into custody one of our students who had brought an unloaded pellet gun to school out of the fact that he was trying to protect himself. He was displaced. He was kind of couch surfing house to house. Didn't have a relationship with his real parents. He was in and out of foster homes and he wanted to protect himself. Now, in that moment, after those students witnessed something so traumatic, the fact that they had not only a licensed professional, but someone who looked like them who could check in, like, hey, like, forget the program. How y'all doing? Like, are y'all good? Y'all want to talk about what you just saw? And the fact that the students were able to express themselves, some of them said, man, I get so angry when I see that. Some of them felt numb because they see it every day. But the fact that we were able to hold space with them in real time, I mean, that's innovation in motion. Like, because again, we haven't seen that before.
There's so much, trust, and that's already placed there by being someone who gets it. Like, what you're talking about is being able to ask them how they are without judgment
Mhm.
and without, I'm so glad that you mentioned cultural competency. Like, I can't tell you how happy that makes me because I think that traditional therapy, for the most part, was made by white people for white people. And
Absolutely.
there was, everything else was left out because and then that is where, if you did go to therapy and you're like, "Well, they don't get what I do." Like they think that what my culture is a diagnosis. And
Hmm.
you bring that up and I I I feel passionate about this because again, same thing, like as a brown person, who living in this country as an immigrant who is playing between the two cultures that I belong to, right? The American and the Indian. But recently, my father was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so stepped into a caregiver role and that has shifted my business in certain ways. That shifted, my move, it's shifted quite a few things. And I'm okay with it because it's important to me to be here in this role and with him and with my parents and my whole family. But I had a therapist who I literally told me that I should not deter my business. I should not deter things that are happening in my life, and I should be able to set boundaries with the parents regardless of whatever diagnosis, health issues that my father may be going through, and called that collectivism as enmeshment. And I just literally was like, in so many non-polite ways, literally wanted to be like, "Go F yourself," but instead just held back a little bit from that and still said that you're effing ridiculous. I did say that.
Yeah. Hmm.
And that was that, right? And as someone who is a former therapist and someone who did do home based counseling and did go into the projects and did go into areas that I had no business being in, that was such an like for me early in my career was an immediate response of if I'm going to go into East New York in Brownsville in Bed-Stuy, I need to really actually understand the generational. So instead of approaching them from a place of hey, I'm going to come here and we're going to work through because someone in this family has severe psychosis or someone in this family is having this. Instead of just, started being like, so tell me about life. Like, tell me about your grandparents. Tell me about, what it was growing up with, your dad or your mom or whoever it was. And it was more about understanding, just building pride within themselves of who they are. And
Mhm.
it shifted it, but there's so many that still don't do that. So the fact that you and your organization really make sure that cultural competency plays a very strong role. I mean, honestly, I think this is one of the most critical pieces that can actually help destigmatize therapy for the Black community, the brown community, the indigenous community is by having more representation.
Absolutely, because we model our behavior off of what we see. So until you see a black or brown person that practices mental health, that goes to therapy, that does grounding exercises, that does meditate, that does say positive affirmations. I mean, that's how I was introduced to therapy. Like it
Yeah,
wasn't until another black man, good friend of mine, noticed that I was struggling. I mean, at that time in my life, I had gotten a DUI. Was going through suicidal ideation. I was feeling like a burden. I had all these symptoms of depression and didn't know it. But because someone that looked like me was like, "Hey, have you thought about therapy?" That instantly builds trust. I can vouch for him, right? Because he looks like
right.
me, he's my friend, all of that. And he was also a psychotherapist. And so it's like, well, if he's a psychotherapist, he's an expert on it. So maybe I should do it. And so that is like it is a constant. And honestly, I can't take the credit. That is God working through my organization
Yeah.
because it's so like it is I it's countless cases of that where, we've had some of our participants speak on the news and they say, like, I tried therapy. Therapy didn't work for me. It didn't get through to me. Being amongst my peers, being able to share some of the things that I went through and understanding like that this was trauma and this was something that I had to like work through. And then getting the opportunity to go to a studio to like record about like what I went through over some rap beats and to, what I'm saying, make my dreams come true of wanting to be a rapper for a moment,
The next Kendrick Lamar.
right. The next Kendrick, that, yeah, it all comes back to, again, like you said, cultural competency. We model ourselves off of what we see.
And what have you noticed that by taking music and taking the cultural references of what these kids relate to, what they feel connected to, and through that process of them being able to say, like, to get to the other side of it, what transformation have you noticed in those kids and those, you do with black men and black boys, but let's focus on the boys first. But like, what transformation have you seen in those black boys where they came in one way and through the program and through their journey, how did it transform them? And how did that transformation influence their group of friends that they were with?
And I can honestly say from my purview, it's primarily behavior, right? So thinking before reacting, taking a moment to take a beat before I just react, before I lash out violently or before I cuss somebody out. Like now I know I learned this at the Cope Dealer program. I can actually take a moment to objectively look at the situation and not, whereas before I'm just trying to get through the day. I don't have time to think about tomorrow, next week, next month. Like I'm just trying to get through the day, minute to minute. Now, because you have these tools that you can use, and again, the tools are not just going to therapy. The tools are putting together a playlist, listening to songs that identify how you're feeling. That's another form of therapeutic
Yeah.
practices that we teach them. So like the biggest and most transformative case
Pharrell
that we have
Williams
had,
happy?
yeah, right?
I
The
mean,
biggest
beats.
the biggest case that we had, we want to talk about transformation. We did a program at a school called Campus International. We started the program with, I believe it was 4 young men, and 3 of them ended up leaving the program due to factors out of school. So gang activity and other things that were out of our control. And there was one student that stayed the course. Now he was on the spectrum, believe neurodivergent, but also very like kind of kept to himself. And at the end of the program, he wrote a poem about his experience over a rap beat and expressed to his family and to us at the end that he now wants to pursue a career in mental health. So that's the biggest transformation that I've ever witnessed is like, wow, he went through the program and before he was very quiet, reserved, misunderstood, all of that.
Yeah,
Now, not only does he know how to heal within himself, he wants to help others heal. He wants to get licensed. That is the biggest
that's
transformation
powerful.
I've witnessed. Yeah.
That's powerful. I mean,
Mhm.
to take someone that is always already othered
Mhm.
and get accepted and find a
Yes.
form of expression that maybe, being verbal and articulating themselves isn't as easy when,
Mhm.
wherever they are in the spectrum.
Yes.
And then to be able to give in tools that actually sparks a part of their gift and
Yes.
allows them to then share it, like, that's beautiful. That's truly, truly impactful, and now he's gonna go out there and transform and impact thousands of lives, hundreds of lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Foster community. That's what we do.
Yeah. So, you brought up that part about building a playlist that can really help you think about like the feelings and express yourself. And so when you're thinking about that, I brought up Pharrell Williams happy because you can't help it. You just become happy. It forces you. And there is so much science behind the vibrations and the music and the beats and the certain level of energy that you're put into. And I remember listening to Pharrell Williams. Actually, I watched Pharrell Williams on Masterclass, and had
Mm.
a masterclass about empathy. And it was specifically talking about that song and just how specific he is on paying attention to the vibration and how that vibration of music affects us internally and what
Mhm.
that just like it just forces that type of change that happens, and that's what happy does. And same thing, you listen to enough depressing music, you will get depressed, you will
Yeah.
feel really sad and low, but you also need sometimes that music to match you, to meet you in the moment. But
Mhm.
how do you help, for example, those kids and those men where you're listening to music, you had something, maybe you had a breakup, you had a rough moment, you're listening to like all that sad, sappy music. And how do you help them kind of rewire that to be like, all right, I'm going to actually, in this moment, I actually need to be listening to these kinds of lyrics. How do you help make sure as they're listening to the music that they're listening to that they're actually paying attention to the lyrics and how those lyrics are affecting them?
That's a great question. The way our Coke Dealer program is designed, so it is based off of an album that I released 5 years ago called Coke Dealer. In that album, I was very intentional in writing songs from the perspective of a Black male experiencing all these emotions, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts. And what we do is we have our students listen to and analyze these lyrics, to identify because, words are spells. You say something and then it manifests. Like that's and so one of the other things that we do is we empower them to create their own mantras and affirmations to change the way that they look at themselves. And so because we put an emphasis on the power of these words and lyricism, when it's their turn to actually write, they now have experienced what their favorite artists do on a day-to-day basis, where you take whatever you're going through, whatever pain, you put it down on paper, you record it. So it's like a cathartic experience of, man, I took this thing that I was going through and I expressed, and I feel so much better because of it. And also, like, you get exposed to different types of music. You get exposed to the Pharrell Happies and there are certain songs that, like, I myself, I have, and I practice what I preach. I have many playlists And one of the playlists that I have is called Crash. That is my SOS. I'm kind of feeling like I'm going into a depressive state. Like I go to that playlist to help me lift my own spirits. So songs on there are Speeding Bullet to Heaven by Kid Cudi or Through the Wire by Kanye West or other songs that over the years have helped me to lift my spirits and change what I see and also empower me to, oh, it's just a moment. Like I'm sitting in the pain right now, but this pain is temporary. And so I think with the fact that they not only analyze lyrics, but they create their own lyrics. Now they understand the power. Oh, if I keep listening to this music about killing myself or killing other people or, treating women or the queer community improperly, then that's going to impact how I behave and how I act. Now that
Yeah.
I know the power of words, it changes what I take on when I'm listening to music.
You've done all this incredible work with the nonprofit organization with your music that you've put out there with Cope Dealer. Is your goal as an artist and as someone who has continued this journey? And like we started in the beginning of the conversation, where I said, I truly believe that your why is very core to you, but the way that you manifest that in the world can always change and shift. Your nonprofits on it's in 10 years, you are now also continuing to expand your impact. What does impact look like today and the future of for Archie as you continue to support Black men and boys to embrace music and through music to change the relationship with mental health?
I will continue to I feel like the work that I do now is my life's mission, my life's calling. I believe that God gave me depression to save lives
Ooh.
because of if it wasn't for what I went through and who I was before therapy, I wouldn't understand the pain that someone is experiencing. So I will always have a hand in doing that work. As PDLB enters the next decade, we're shifting some leadership. I am going to remain CEO and remain an advisor to the work that we do in Cleveland, where we were founded, but we're bringing on a new executive director because it's time for some new energy. It's time to shift things a bit. And just for me in my life, I built this thing from nothing, from my own pain. I've touched millions of people as a result. And now it's like, all right, well, what's next? And I'm still doing music here and there, just tinkering. I haven't released really that much as of late, but I've also I relish in telling great stories in music. So I actually have started creating content. I host a series called All Due Respect, and we dissect the stories behind samples of some of the most popular rap classics. And right now I'm in the midst of a season talking about Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt and the Blueprint. And it's been catching on like wildfire because there's so many great artists that tell the story of Jay-Z, not just the final product, but everything that came about to create that product. And so that's where my passion lies now is in addition to doing work in mental health is storytelling, and that's all I do. Like with my songwriting, this is just a new form of it,
Yeah.
to entertain and to educate, to edutain. That is
Entertain. Yeah.
that is the season of life that I'm in now. As someone, I've only been in LA for about 4 years, so I'm still relatively new here, but it's the first time in my life where I feel like I truly belong as a creative. And so
Mm,
now I'm able to tap into different frequencies of creativity that I didn't have when I lived in Cleveland. And
yeah.
that's not to take anything away from my hometown where I was born and raised, but to be in one of the meccas of creators, like it opens my eyes up to I want to try new things. I want to try different things. And some will succeed, some I'll learn from, but I want to try new things. And that's the season that I'm in now.
I think that's incredible because I think it's really important, again, going back to that whole idea and notion that you feel like it was your gift in a way to have depression because of now you know what your life purpose is and you feel it so strongly, which I think is beautiful. And you built this nonprofit. You did this work. You're continuing to empower. You are empowering through music. You're empowering through your organization. You're empowering through content creation. You are finding ways to make sure that you reach Black men and boys in a way that can help them open up. I also think that the work and the weight that it does take on someone like a change maker to
Oof.
then hold that weight of
Oh,
not only your own stuff, but hold the weight of all the people that you're influencing. As an empath, that is a lot. And it's a lot to navigate. It's just as, you've been talking this whole time and I've been feeling chills because every time you tell a story, I get chills. And it's like the dopamine release of the impact. And I just feel it that strongly. But how are you navigating those evolvements? Because sometimes people want to see, the ones who benefited you from the organization want to see you there. The people who benefited you from your music want to see you there. And so now all these been like, well, why are you doing this content creation thing? Why are you doing this other thing? And I think it's just as important to what you said about that evolvement of who and how you're showing up, because you said that you built this organization out of your pain. And I think it's really, really important that change makers don't stay in that pain.
mm,
Otherwise, that pain can actually come back in a way
mm-hmm.
that is more troublesome and unravel everything that you've done to like get to where you were. So
Yes.
how are you allowing yourself, giving yourself that permission to evolve? And what are you doing to keep yourself sustaining, all the weight that you're carrying with all the lives that you are changing?
Man, thank you so much for bringing that to the forefront right now, because again, that is something I don't really, over the years, over the last 10 years, I hadn't really taken as much a priority in is what are you doing, Archie, to take care of Archie? Are you good? Are you and part of the reason why I moved to LA was because I was pouring from an empty cup. I felt like I was one of the big fish in the fishbowl. Everybody was looking up to me and coming to me for advice and coming to me for counsel. I was willing to give it like to anyone who would come to me. But then when it was my turn to seek out help and my turn to ask, what do I do? Where do I go? How do I get through this? I had no one that I could look up to. And so part of my motivation for moving to LA was I wanted to be around people that were on the level that I was at and beyond the level. So they could actually teach me and they could actually pour into me, this whole thing of coping with success. I talk about that all the time. The music I'm working on now, I talk about coping with success and everything that comes with that, the isolation, the people around you saying that you've changed and they no longer want to talk to you or be associated with you because, they feel like, oh, you changed. And it's like, well, of course I've changed. Like,
And even
you
the
know,
grief, right? Of
yes.
that you recognize that, yeah, there is an element of change that I've had. And I'm sure you've had these moments because I definitely had these moments and I feel like I'm going through it again right now. Is that as I'm evolving, I'm also recognizing like, oh, that friend that's really close to me, I don't think it's gonna last beyond
Yeah.
maybe another couple years.
Hmm.
You already start sensing the distance because of that shift. And
Yes.
there's real grief. There's real
My
like,
God.
wanting to hold on, like, you're like, "No, no,
Yeah.
no," like, you can have friends at all levels, like, what is this? You
Tears,
know? Like
nightmares,
yeah,
like all I've experienced all of that. When you lose a friendship, it's like losing a life of
yeah,
someone that you love. It is losing the life of the friendship that you value, that you love. And I've had to gain like thicker skin and to accept that that happens in life. Friends are seasons. There's some that stay
yeah.
longer than others. And yeah, like as far as taking care of myself, that is part of the reason why I'm shifting my focus from just everything being the nonprofit to like literally my wife tells me all the time, you need a hobby. I don't have hobbies. Everything I
Don't be a
do
boomer,
is tied
Archie.
to making money, is
That's why
transactional.
that's why boomer men are the way they are. Not be a boomer man, Archie.
Right. And so my Reiki healer, the last time I saw her was I was just about to turn 40 and I told her like, man, like, what should be my focus like in my 40s? And because I was so serious in my 30s, building PDLB and again, and also chasing my dreams. I quit my job. Like I was out here struggling, like working whatever gigs I could find to put food on the table. Like it was, and now it's like I'm burnt out. Like I'm tired. And she told me, she was like, you need to have more fun in your 40s. And so now I'm like trying golf. Like I'm going out with and trying different things, like, and continuing to search for what is this thing that I like to do that I'm not trying to make no money off of it. I'm not trying to
Just
necessarily
want to
meet
have
new
fun.
people. I just want to have fun.
Yeah.
And
Like
so
not
like
everything needs to become a moneymaker thing. Like it can just be a
it can
hobby.
just be that. It
Yeah.
can just be a hobby.
Yeah.
So that's something that, I turned 41 in 2 weeks and I'm still pursuing finding those
Yeah.
hobbies, but at least I'm trying. Whereas before it was all about the business. It was all about, I mean,
Well,
any
I think that's what we
nonprofit
also
leader.
learn.
Yeah. And plus any,
You
any
know,
nonprofit leader that's listening to this understands how hard it is to apply for grants and to chase a check
yeah.
non-stop. It is very hard to do it year in and year out, especially in this climate where the focus has shifted away from organizations like mine.
Yeah. I think
DEI is now a
nonprofit
bad word, and so like,
empathy is considered a sin. Like make
mhm,
sense of that. And so
yeah,
totally. I think so much of what I don't know, this may put me in hot waters, but I think the nonprofit model is actually not a great one. And I think it
mm,
keeps people in that place of scarcity a lot. And it just,
mhm,
and also I don't like the word that it's nonprofit. I think the name needs to change because people then think like, oh, nonprofit is going to be there for
yeah,
just like it's constantly asking, but it's just like it's still a business model. That's what it
mhm,
is. It's still a
mhm.
business. It's still a function of business. And so the way it functions needs to change. But anyways, I digress. But, Archie, I think that, what you bring to the table is just so powerful with being able to talk about one is that you worked as like again, being a boomer man, embodying your boomer man. But I think that that's what happens is that people, especially brown and black people who, regardless of what socioeconomic class you come from, are just conditioned to, you got to prove yourself. You got to validate your worth in this world. You got to work hard for everything. Things are not going to come easy. You got to make sure that you're not seen as a certain way. Like there's all these like it's exhausting. It's exhausting to carry all these assumptions of society, assumptions of what people think of us, and then having to do things to disprove them. Right. And
Yeah,
then, and of course, there's also joy and the ambition of being able to achieve what you do. And it is a lot of work. It's not like you can't not hustle when you're trying to build a business.
yeah,
But I think that's where then it's like you reach a certain level and now you're like, okay, I have the ability to, have fun and to build now from a different place.
mhm,
A really good friend of mine, and she's been on my podcast as well, Amina Altai, phenomenal, phenomenal thought leader. And she wrote the book called The Ambition Trap. And
mm,
you definitely need to read it. But, she really talks about that relationship between building from a place of wound and how that leads to
mm,
burnout and how that leads to us not being able to see that success and building something successful does not have to be tied to this way like a working from a place of wound, but when we work from a place of fun, when we work from a place of finding our purpose and like working from our natural gift, we actually don't then take on some of that trauma and we're able to actually still have the same level of success and ambition and still do something wonderful, but without the weight of what we've been carrying.
mhm,
And so it's
mm.
really, really powerful. So, one, definitely think everyone should get that book. But I'm curious that now, 10 years later, with you having done what you've done, with gone viral with that song, with building the organization, now what does your dad think?
No, both my parents are like my biggest cheerleaders now. I mean, they've seen it all. Like,
Does your
brother
dad
was,
speak of his emotions now?
I wouldn't, he every now and then, you know what I mean? But like, they don't go to therapy, but they also like are more open and receptive to, if I'm going through something, if I want to share. And my dad has gotten a little bit more transparent with his emotions as opposed to how he was before. I mean,
Hey,
also
even that
there
small
were
percentage makes a
yeah, I'll
difference.
take it. I'll take it. And I mean, he's retired now. So like he doesn't have to be on all the time and he knows that he can always come to me and share what's going on. But overall, I think they have because they've seen me being transparent and, not being afraid. I think they're more receptive and open to being vulnerable than they were before.
I think one of my favorite I will say, we talk about role modeling, we talk about the people that we make an impact on, but I think actually one of the things that I'm the most proud of also is just that because we, people like us take on that different path and say, no, we're not going to follow the status quo. We're going to do it differently. We're going to be cycle breakers, all those kind of things. We're kind of giving our parents an opportunity to see what life could be like if they
Yes.
did this.
Yes.
And so when I like, for me, like, I see my mom, like, she's open, she's receptive, she does these things, and it just, like, makes me happy to feel like, "Oh, she's allowing herself to breathe a little, like, free herself a little bit," and it's
Hmm.
just like to me, it's like being a proud parent, but, like, reverse.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, an example of that is my parents moving to Florida. So, like,
Mm.
I know for a fact that they were inspired when me and my wife moved to California and they were still in Cleveland. Like, oh, well, I mean, if they moved, I mean, that's the thing with Archie and DK. Like, they don't play around. When they say they're about to do something, they just do it, and
Mm.
I think that inspired, I know it inspired them. They've said it, that inspired them to not be afraid to move to a warmer
Mm.
climate and to retire to a beautiful place down in Sarasota. So yeah, like definitely I've seen how not just my parents have impacted me, but how I've impacted my parents for sure.
Yeah. Archie, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story so openly, so vulnerably, and, just again, I think showing the power of when we show up with vulnerability, when we show up with authentically and genuinely asking, "How are you?" and expecting that I want to genuinely hear how you are and being able to take in cultural nuances and helping these men and kids be seen and felt and just not judged and just be themselves to the point of then, role modeling that. I think that what you've done is incredible. I'm so excited to follow your journey as you build more content and you get out there and you keep sharing the good work. And just really, really excited. I'm definitely going to share with everyone how to follow you, how to connect with you. Will be in the links below for this episode. But Archie, just thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for the impact you've done. Congratulations on your 10-year anniversary. Happy early birthday.
Thank you.
And, cannot wait to see more of the impact that you're making.
Thank you again. Thank you again for this platform and for having me.
If you're enjoying these episodes, I'd really love it if you could subscribe, leave a review, or share it with your friends and family. Your words help others discover that the stories and these episodes exist in the perspectives that we're exploring over here. And the more feedback we get from you through those reviews, the more we can make sure that we're creating meaningful episodes that you want to listen to. Thank you so much.